Hi friends, this is Ray from Honeytop Bees. I want to tell you why I sold all of my 10 frame equipment and went to all 8 frame. And if you're a beginning beekeeper, you might want to do the same.
Coming up.
Now, there's a couple scenarios where you might not want to use an 8 frame box. Support the 8 frame movement. Just to give you some context on a couple of things. I've been beekeeping since I was a child with my father. And most of my life I've used 10 frame equipment. But a couple of years ago, I sold all my 10 frame equipment and went to all 8 frame equipment. And there's a couple of reasons why I did it. And if you're a brand new beginning beekeeper on a small scale, then you might want to do the same. For most of the people that are starting in beekeeping, they're going to start with 1, 2, 5, maybe work their way up to 10 hives. I usually run under 40 hives, but I've gone to all 8 frame. And there's a couple of good reasons why I've done that. And when you look at the 2 boxes, you might say, you know, there's really not that big of a deal, a difference between them. I mean, really, it's just 2 frames. But these frames can weigh 8, 9, 10 pounds apiece when they're full of honey. Multiply that times 2, you've got 15 pounds of difference in weight between a full 8 frame box and a full 10 frame box. So the number one reason why people go to 8 frame boxes is because they're a little bit more compact and they're easier to lift. Most of the people watching my channel are 45 or 50 years or older. Now if you're younger and watching this channel, please don't go away. I need you. I need some younger beekeepers, so stay around. I'm glad to have you. You belong here. But most of the people that watch my channel are 45 years and older. And the weight becomes an issue as you get older. Having to lift heavy supers full of honey during the honey flow season can really be a big burden. And so that's one of the reasons why I changed to all 8 frame. But I want to show you the second reason, and this is really the biggest reason why I've changed to 8 frame. And here it is. I'm going to show you on the 10 frame first. The 10 frame hive was developed as a result of Reverend Langstroth's work in the 1800s, where he discovered the secret of bee space, which is the amount of space that the bees leave between the combs in the natural. And so he developed frames, modular frames that can be removed from the hive, makes it easy for extracting, that are based on that principle of how much space the bees like to have between combs in order to work. And so he passed away in the late 1800s. In the early 1900s, the standard box that we now have came into play, and that is the 10 frame box. The only thing that they didn't think of with the 10 frame box is this. They designed it so 10 frames fit in there just right. And there's a little bit of extra space left to right, but only about 1/4 of an inch of space that is available on a standard 10 frame box. And so when you go to manipulate your frames during the beekeeping season, what happens is the bees propolize the frames, and that propolis begins to build up. And as a result of that, it gets harder and harder to break them apart as the bee season goes on. And it gets harder and harder to put them back into the hive unless you scrape them all down. And so what we often do as beekeepers is we take our hive tool and we start on the end and we break the first one apart. There's just not much room to work with. And so as a result of that, maybe if you have a J-hook tool or even this tool, you'll start going in and trying to pry out the frames in order to get them out. Or you'll stick your hive tool in here and pry them out. And what happens is this thinner piece of wood begins to bust up over time. And it really causes a lot of damage to your box, all because there's not much extra space. And this is one of the things that I love about the 8 frame, other than the fact that it's much lighter. And that is that it was designed with some additional space inside of it. I don't know why nobody talks about this more, but to me, this is such a big thing. And it really makes a significant difference when you're working your bees. I want you to see this. I want you to see how much extra space a standard 8 frame box has. There's a full inch of extra space. Now I know some of you are probably thinking, well, will the bees just start building comb in there? And my experience is no, they don't. Number one, because it's on the ends of the box, closest to the edges of the box, and so that's not where they tend to want to build extra comb. And when I'm working my box, I'll leave this space on the right side, and then after I inspect, the next time I'll leave my space on the left side, or sometimes I'll just center it in the middle like this and split the space. But here's what happens when I'm working my hive, is when I go to remove my first outer frame and break it apart, I have all this extra space to move this frame and break it loose from the others. And as a result, it becomes much easier on my equipment. This little feature, again, I don't know why people don't talk about it more, because I think it's really significant. So what do people with 10 frame boxes often do? And it works. Well, they put 9 frames in a 10 frame box, because then they don't have this problem where there's not enough space to break the frames apart. And so they remove one of the frames from the box. And in doing so, they're essentially creating the same kind of space, if not a little bit more, than you get in an 8 frame box that's already there. But if you remove a frame from a 10 frame box, well, now you're down to 9 frames. At that point, there's really only 1 frame difference between a 10 and an 8 frame. Yeah, might as well just start with 8 frame boxes. Now, there are a couple scenarios where you might not want to use an 8 frame box, and I'll explain those to you. The biggest scenario is if you have already purchased and made a significant investment in 10 frame equipment. If your 10 frame equipment is working fine, it's okay. As I like to tell people, the bees don't care, but your back cares. So if you've already bought some, don't feel like you have to go out and start purchasing 8 frame equipment if you're satisfied with what you have. It's not like the bees are going to be tremendously more efficient in one versus the other. Also, if you're planning to be a commercial beekeeper or start having a large number of hives, you might want to stay with 10 frame just because of the volume. It means less boxes for you when you have more frames per box. And so that'd be another scenario where maybe you just want to stay with 10 frame boxes. However, if you're just getting started in beekeeping and you wanted to say, hey Ray, what's your advice? Should I go with the 10 frame or an 8 frame? I want to tell you something. I'm sold on the 8 frame hive for most backyard beekeepers. I just think it's more efficient. I just feel like it's easier to work and that you won't be disappointed with it. And so if you're just getting started, my tip is buy 8 frame. Support the 8 frame movement. That's all I've got for today. God bless. Have a good day.